Hey guys, how are you today? This is Alison from Alison Answers. And I just got off of a podcast with a good friend of mine, Angela Bradford. I was a guest on her show. And we got into the subject of addictions. And we really went deep into the idea of the family dynamics behind addictions. And we were just rolling on it. And I said, you know what, I'm going to pop on a solo podcast and I'm just going to really try to add value and give value to families and people who are going through that sort of a struggle. So I really, my goal, my mission really in life is to add value wherever I go. And I really believe by doing that in life, if you can help people, my friend's podcast is about, helping one starfish at a time. And I believe if one person can be helped from this podcast, it will really, really mean a lot to me. So what we're going to get into today is about addictions and about the family dynamics behind that. So what I want to share with you is this a very simple thing. It goes like this, is that think about the family that you have grown up in. We all have something called a system. And as a therapist, we call it systems theory. And it's just a fancy word. In the 12-step program, we talk about this family dynamics are talked about at length. So an ACOA, a person who is an adult child of an alcoholic, or an adult child of someone who's mentally ill, or an adult child of a gambler, or an adult child of someone with an eating disorder, or with a drug addiction, or somebody who has a mental illness who is, not predictable in how they're, the most predictable thing in the parent's life is their unpredictability. Most of us have grown up in dysfunctional homes. My parents were not drug addicts, but my mom definitely suffered from depression. She would have mood swings. I was neglected. My dad and mom were hippie-like, they were hippies. And basically what they did was they believed in freedom and they just allowed us to just go and explore and just be, because that is what they believed love was. They believed that the restrictive nature of holding a child back was something that was bad for them. So the dysfunction in my home, my parents got divorced. I had like that house on the block that, was just a scene, and it wasn't that it was a scene to do with like drugs or alcohol. That came later with my brothers and me too. But the thing is that what it was more like, just a lot of disorder. And it was not organized, and there was nothing you could really, there was nothing you could hang your coat on. There was nothing really that was like organized. So I lived my life organizing and try just believe, creating a purpose almost unknowingly of making things look good, making things better, making sure the dogs and the cats were fed, making sure the house was clean. I was the youngest in this family. And I was the one who brought happiness. And, in a lot of ways, this has paid off for me. But what I want to say to you guys is that I want you to take a moment or longer than a moment and really look at your life. The solutions to our life are there. There is always a solution. You may not have found it yet, but there is always a solution to any problem that you're in. There is also, sometimes people will poo-poo a solution to what they're going through because it doesn't answer the whole problem. But sometimes for one problem, there are many, many, many solutions. So what I want you to consider is living in a baseline of there is a solution. No matter what, I don't know what it is, but there is one. And if you know that and you anchor that in your heart, any situation that you're in can get better. And I have learned to do that. I have learned to do that. I have also learned that it is my responsibility. Anything that's in my life is my responsibility. My happiness is my responsibility. The outcomes of my life are my responsibility. Who I have in my life is my responsibility. Things aren't happening to me. Things are showing up because of the way that I'm thinking, feeling, and acting. The focus that I put on things, the meaning I attach to things is creating where I am financially, emotionally, spiritually, socially, relationally, vocationally, how much fun I have. I am responsible for the way that I see things and the meaning that I attach to those things. If the meaning I am attaching to things is causing me distress, I either move the things or I change the meaning. It is my job. So in regard to addictions and family dynamics, and it doesn't have to just be addictions. Let me make this clear. It just has to be some unrest, things that aren't working. So when you look at a family dynamic, if there's a person in the family who is the problem, they can have the addiction, they can have a behavior problem, they can whatever. And we have that all the time. People come in with a child kind of by the shoulders and they're like, hey, fix this kid. They suck. Well, guess what? The kid is just the identified patient. We do not grow up in isolation. We do not live in isolation. And there are dynamics between human beings. And just like we have this kind of programming inside of us, which I say all the time, from 0 to 7, we are in a theta brainwave. We are creating and building synaptic connections at the highest rate. And what we are doing in the theta brainwave, let me go back to that. Theta brainwave is like a hypnotic state where everything we need to learn is being learned at that time, and it's being programmed into us. By the time a child is anywhere between 2 and 7, which seems to be a wide gap, there's 1.5 quadrillion synaptic connections, which is a tremendous amount of synaptic connections. And the synaptic connections are these little connections between these little, I'm not going to get into the science. Bottom line is those connections in our brain that create this network, they are a whole bunch of meanings and opinions that our brain, that we have established based on the information that's coming through our 5 senses. So as we're growing up, we are creating a life and a perspective of life, because it's wonderful that we're made that way, because we have to learn and grow. The real thing that needs to happen at that point is that we need to be able to, at some point in our adult life, look at the things that we've learned, the programming that we have, and say, hey, there is a possibility that if my life is shit, that I have to look at my programming and stop looking outside of myself for a solution, like it's his fault, it's her fault. Oh, I have a bad boyfriend, or this was, it's not them. Wake up. That's my book, The Wake Up Call. You got to wake up, be awake and aware in the now, without judgment of yourself, and just be honest and say, I'm creating this life that I'm living. And this is the premise that I come from. I believe with everything that's in me that we are creators. We are co-creators with God. I'm a person of faith. Whatever you believe in, it doesn't matter what you call your God, your source, your infinite love, infinite intelligence. Science is catching up, and science is proving that the way that we think, just like the way that we harnessed electricity that we didn't understand, didn't believe in, or whatever forever ago, wasn't forever, it was a little over 100 years, right? Electricity, we are harnessing the power of thought. And if you can do that, you can recreate your life. The real, my love of a quote, I am always saying it, Alvin Toffler says that the illiterate of the 21st century are not people who cannot read or write. It is the people who cannot learn, unlearn, and learn again. I applied this to the learning that we've had when we were children, the unlearning being, and the way that we unlearn is we look at and we see, we can actually be honest and see what we've learned. Oh, I believe this about myself. I believe that I'm not the girl that gets that princess bedroom. I believe that. So I'm going to create a life being the woman that doesn't get the dream this, the dream that, the dream everything. That is what I believed when I was a little girl. I was ashamed, and I didn't believe. I would work as hard as I could, and I would climb that mountain, and I'd get right to that top. But my expectation was that I would never have what other little pretty girls would get, because that's what my life showed me. It programmed to me. And then I made it my life by visualizing it, being it, and becoming the girl who didn't get it, instead of relearning, learning something new, seeing what I learned, unlearning it, say, no, that's not true, and I don't want that. I'm going to create some different network in my brain, and now I'm going to create what I want. I'm going to believe what I want. This is the problem. We have been so conditioned with our five senses and tangible things all around us. Science has proved it, but I don't know why we're not learning this in school. It's absolutely a crime that we are not learning this in school. And I just want to throw that out there. A friggin' crime. It makes me want to scream. It makes me want to cry that we are not learning in school that if we are taught somehow subliminally that everything that is matter, that is physical, is the truth, as opposed to, I mean, I learned Psych 101, the science, the perception, psychology of perception, that the amount of information that's around us that is screened out, what is unseen is more true than what is seen. And we have obliterated that reality, and we've lied to our children, we've lied to ourselves, because it feels more comfortable to say, if I can see it, if I can feel it, touch it, taste it, then it's real. So now I'm going to believe that, and I'm going to let my life just keep repeating on the same loop over and over and over again. We've heard it 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times, that 91% of the thoughts that we think today are the same thoughts we thought yesterday. We know that. Thoughts are on an electric loop. They're electrical impulses on a loop that just keep repeating, and we just keep repeating the same life over and over again. So when people come into the counseling center, we say, oh, what's the pattern? Oh, okay, we can change a pattern. I love patterns. Once you see a pattern in your life, you can change it. You just have to know it. Truth is everything. Truth is a pathway to all freedom. So now, in rare form, as Alison always is in, I have trailed off from family dynamics. But all of this shit is the background. It's the foundational structure underneath these family dynamics. So in family dynamics, if you have one family member, let's say they're an addict or whatever they are, it doesn't matter. They're dysfunctional, and everybody's like, oh my God, there's something wrong with this person. We call it the identified patient. What the family does, in order to, I'm going to use addiction because it's easy for me just to use that topic. What families do, anyone who is an addict, the only way to remain an addict or to remain in some way having a very severe dysfunctional problem is to be in denial about it. Because if we're not in denial about a thing, if we're living in the truth about a thing, it's not as easy to maintain the addiction or the problem. So what ends up happening is that the family, just like the human being is programmed, the family becomes programmed together in this kind of almost like this interactive, connected system is what we call it. So this system now is running on scripts. So you will know that if you're in a relationship with someone or a family member, your mother, your father, your son, your daughter, whatever, if you're all living in the same home, you pretty much know that if you say this particular thing to this particular person, you know exactly what their response will be. I know because I ask people all the time, okay, if you said this to your mother or if you said this to your husband, whatever, what would they say? They can tell you. So And it's somewhere very close to the scripts that they're playing out over and over again, just like the thoughts that we're thinking over and over again. This is like a larger, like a macro of what we do internally. So it's kind of like these human beings are interacting repeatedly over and over and over again in the same way. It's just that the circumstances change. So what you want to notice is that you as a human being, you are communicating, right? You are living the same life over and over again. Hopefully you're not, but if you are living the same life over and over again, you're just repeating the thoughts and the feelings that you have become addicted to. Now the family is doing the same thing. So now you have an addict who is the dysfunctional one. And now we have different family members that we've labeled in family dynamics is, there's someone who's a hero. There's someone who's a scapegoat. That's usually the addict. Or it could be another family member. So it could be a child. Let's say that there's a father who's a gambler. Very often there will be a child who is a scapegoat, because that child now will be the one that the family needs to focus on so that all the attention moves away from the gambler or from the alcoholic or from the very, very dysfunctional marriage that's at the forefront of this family. So if the family can blame one person, one child, it's typically a child, then the family does not have to deal with the real problem. It's not to say that that isn't a problem with whatever's happening with that child, but children usually personify or communicate or show what's happening in the family. That's why I love when a child comes in and they're all jammed up and they're having all these difficulties. They're telling us a story. They're saying, my life is not right. Kids act right when they feel right. Human beings act right when they feel right. So basically, this kid doesn't feel right, and we have to find out how come. So usually what people want to do is they want to drug them up, because it's a quick solution. Seemingly, it's not a quick solution, and it's not always the best solution. I'm not against kids being medicated if they need to be, but let's try to find out what's happening. Very often, parents don't want to look at their own stuff, and they have not, because of their own upbringing, learned anything about stopping and just owning their stuff. One of the reasons that human beings do not own their stuff, it's very, very simple, is that we have learned, we live in a mistake-averse society that has taught us forever that a mistake is not good, that you need to fit in, that there are behaviors that you should not be doing. And if you're doing these behaviors, there's something dreadfully wrong with you. Instead of understanding that when we are wrong, when we make mistakes and we own them, and we understand that this is part of being a human being, it's part of growing, it's part of becoming the best person you can ever be, that we don't have to defend ourselves anymore, that if a parent just says, you know what, wow, holy shit, yeah, I suck today. That's the best parent in the world. You want to know the truth? My son said to me once, and I loved it. I still love it. I tell the story all the time. He was young. I don't even remember how old he was. He might have been like, I don't know. He's such a brainiac. He could have been anywhere from 4 to 8. I don't even know. But he said, I was yelling at my kids. Oh, he must have been older because I was probably not yelling at babies, but I was yelling at my kids. I'm not a yeller. I just want you to know. But at this one particular time, I was yelling at my kids, like, come on, get your shit, right? And then because I had 3 kids in 4 years and 4 months, I had more kids after that, but basically I had 3 little boys and they were fun as fudge, but they were wild, they were great kids, but whatever, I yelled. So what my son said, my oldest son, he said, Mom, hey, listen, I know that when you yell and when you just yelled, you're not yelling at us. I know that you're yelling at yourself. I was like, damn, you know what, Luke? You could not even be any more right. Thank you so much. I am yelling at myself. I'm yelling at myself, Luke. And I don't know if I went into this, but I'm going to tell you guys is that I was yelling at myself because when our kids don't act right, we feel like we're bad parents. And we need them to shape up. We need them to act the way that makes us look good. We need them to act right, because basically it's a reflection of me. It felt like. But when he said that, I just was like, damn, this kid's good. And you know what? If we can just own our shit, like I when I've made mistakes with my kids, I've just went in and said, hey, listen, you know what? I shouldn't have reacted the way I reacted to you, but that doesn't take away from what you did. You know, what you did wasn't cool, and you know, I want you to change that, but you know, I want to own my part, because that really wasn't right the way I handled it. And what I'll tell them, I'll say, you know what? You know why I did that? I did that because I was afraid. I'm afraid for you. I was afraid that something bad would happen, and I overreacted to that, you know, and I'm sorry. However, you know, still what you did is not going to work, you know, and you can still be firm. Parents don't, but we believe that if we show vulnerability and we're honest, that somehow they're going to take advantage. No, what they're going to do is they're going to copy you. So when I say that to my kid, I do it all the time. I still do it with my kids. I just own shit right up. As soon as I do it wrong, immediately. My daughter just wrote me this whole long thing telling me that I wasn't listening to her a certain way. I said, Grace, you know, you are 100% right. I own all of that. And I didn't start talking about what was wrong with her. I just said, you know what? I do that. You know what? When it's after 11 o'clock at night, Grace, I get tired. And you know what? I'm not really that reasonable. I know that about me. I think we all know it about me. I need my rest. I don't like staying up late. I don't like talking about heavy stuff late. So I just was honest. So, you know, I'm going off on this thing with you guys, but I'm just trying to tell you that there's a way out of this stuff. We don't have to be afraid of our kids. We don't have to be afraid of the way we interact with people. We don't have to do that anymore. We need to become who we are. The truth is good enough. What are we hiding? We all screw up. So back to what I'm saying, there's a dynamic, there's a scapegoat, there's a hero, because the hero is going to make sure, that's the vigilant one in the room that becomes a codependent, becomes the one who marries the alcoholic, becomes the one who's the fixer, who gets their dopamine shots, who gets their feeling of greatness from being the one who fixes bad situations. That's the saint in a long-term marriage with an alcoholic that everybody says, oh my God, she's a saint for putting up with him. That's the hero. That's the person in the family that is going to, you know, make sure that the alcoholic sits down quietly and doesn't cause trouble. That's going to be the one that takes the brunt sometimes of things that, you know, or cheers up people or makes people feel better. Know who you are in your family dynamic. I was the hero. That's what I was. I wasn't the scapegoat. You know what I mean? You want to know who you were, because you're going to bring it into your family when you grow up. And then you're going to look for so heroes very often marry the problem that they have to cover up and fix. So they live a perpetual life of not being connected to themselves. All that they ever get out of life is their purpose in rescuing or helping other people. So let me get back. And this is not like hard and fast. There's all different blurred and variations of these types of things. But when there's also the invisible child, the one that flies under the radar, the one that's going to make sure they're not a part of any of the problem in that family. If everybody's fighting over there, that person's over there, making sure that nobody even notices them. That is the husband or the wife who basically doesn't bring things up, who avoids fights, who avoids conversations. I don't believe spouses should fight, by the way. I'll explain at another podcast. But basically, there's no reason for two people to be yelling at one another when you're able to have a conversation, because you don't have to defend yourself and you don't have to attack anyone either. There's a way to live life where you don't have to defend and attack, defend and attack. Most arguments are that defend, attack, defend, attack, defend, attack. Where are you getting? Nowhere. Okay. So, and you're just hurting one another. It's all fear. So what I want to say is think about your family dynamic. The way it is with an addict, and I'm going to kind of hone in and close this up. An addict is a person who has a disease. So now I'm not going to get into all the different theories and, oh my God, you're not an addict forever. I'm not labeling anybody anything because I don't even believe in that. I think that's a bad idea. But when you think about everybody, when there is an addict in a family, there's a disease and it's a family disease. I'm just using it that way. So a family disease is that every single person in the family is a part of that problem. And they're all contributing to it and giving energy and life to that problem, which I believe is ultimately evil that wants to destroy the family. So basically, if someone is an addict in that family, it's not just that it's them that's wrong. So the person who is the addict in, let's say, a family with 3 kids and 2 adults, if it's the parent, what will happen is there's a lot of avoidance of that, and no one really wants to look at it because it is usually a lot of pushback if anybody mentions that the person's an addict, and the hero, which could be the mom, would also be the person who would be covering it up, possibly, or complaining about it all the time. And then the kids take on these other different roles. So the real way to assist anyone who has any addiction or any kind of problem whatsoever is you have to disconnect yourself from their problem and their disease. People who are codependent are supporters of the disease. They're supporters of the addiction because what they're doing is they are playing their part in it, which is, I'm going to cover up for you. I'm going to fix things for you. I'm going to make you feel better. I'm going to deny you the pain that is your gift that's going to help you to get better. I'm going to keep you from hitting a bottom because it's too emotional for me. And actually, I don't want to watch that happen. And I'm afraid of what it will do to me if your addiction and all the ramifications show itself. It will have an impact on me. And that is true. So it's a very, very important thing to understand that you can initially go inside your body and detach from the outcomes and allow the addict or whoever they are who is dysfunctional, allow them to experience their own ramifications to their behavior. God has given us an autocorrect, which keeps us aware of what we're doing. And it shows us this works for me, this doesn't work for me. Parents have a very difficult time allowing their kids, especially addicts, to feel the consequences of their actions because really, honestly, we don't want to feel it. So if we're really honest and we say it is actually selfish not to let a child to feel the pain of something that is happening in their life that they created, and it is actually not love to deny a person the pain that they created. So a very big part of removing yourself or helping someone else get over an addiction is you have to remove yourself from fixing it for them. Because of what that message is that you're giving them the message that they're not capable. One of the things that I have done with, I've had addicts in my life, a lot of different ones. And one of the things that I've done in different ways is I've enabled, when I was younger. And then later on in life, what I have done is I have said, you know what? I know you can do this. I believe in you. And I actually had one of my sons had an addiction, and he's in recovery and he's good. But one of the things I did say to him, because it was very hard for me to not help him when he dug a hole for himself. And what I started to do is I would say, hey, listen, I love you so, so, so much. And I all I want to do is give you this thing and make this go away for you. But I have to tell you that if I do that, I know that I'm hurting you. And it is the hardest thing in the world for me right now not to do this and to say no to you, but I'm going to have to do it as a greater good, as a higher good, because I know you can do this. I know your strengths. I know what you're capable of. And I'm going to stop communicating to you that you're not capable. And I'm sorry that I've done that to you. And you know what he said? He's like, thank you so much. I know that's true. And he really knew and that helped him to understand that, you know, and instead of people yelling at their kids or whoever, like, I'm not going to do that for you, or, oh, let me run and do that for you. Those two extremes are not helpful. Giving to someone as a martyr and being mad about it. You know, I have a rule of thumb in families. I'll tell you what it is. It works for me, and it worked well for me, is that I'm not going to do something today that I'm going to regret tomorrow. So I slip up with that, you know, at times where I'll fall into being a martyr, but you know, like so if I'm going to pick this thing up, you know, a sock on the floor, you better bet your ass that I don't have a right to complain about it later because I've decided to pick it up. But if I say, listen, you know what, guys, listen, you know what, I don't want to do that right there, but I know I can't live with that. So I need you to clean that or do that or whatever, because if I do it, I'm going to resent you and I can't live. Resentment is a killer and I don't want to live it with any resentment. So you want to start to build these systems in your life that do not support dysfunctional, over enmeshed denial behaviors of avoidance, you know, in your family, covering up stuff that isn't true. Then we have in families also, we have these people who are like the truth tellers who will be like, did you see that? I can't believe that just happened. Oh my God. And then everybody in the family, that can turn into the scapegoat. That right there can turn into a big scapegoat. I call that Marilyn, you know, the one who can see everything that's going on. And they're like, wow, that is like, you know, and you're hyper vigilant because you have parents when you were growing up who you did not believe saw what was really going on. So you grow into an adult who's hyper vigilant, looking around everywhere and making sure that everything runs well, because you become the parent of the planet. So it could be you're the parent in your family, because the parentified child in a family really has a core sense of shame, because they feel like they don't have parents. They don't know what it is. They don't feel good enough to have somebody guiding them. And then they know that they have to be looking around at all times to make sure things run well and everybody's safe. They don't believe they have parents that are going to keep them safe. And that dynamic can be incredibly, incredibly long lasting, because people will go through their whole lives believing that they're the one in the workplace that's like, oh my God, like, is there, you know, how are we going to make sure that doesn't happen? They see everything. They don't trust their leaders. And they feel like they have to be in charge. That's where like controlling comes in, being over controlling, being super scared that you can't like let go and let someone else do something, because you grew up knowing that you couldn't trust the people in charge. So you learn to always have to be in charge. I was like that, you know. I've gained from all of that dysfunction, I have gained a lot of strengths. I've gained how to be on top of shit, how to be a leader, how to work hard, how to make sure that things really do turn out well, you know. But in the process of taking the good, gleaming the good out of the hard times, what I've also done is I've said, let me sand the edges here. Let me not be controlling. Let me own my stuff. Let me say when I've made a mistake. Let me continue to see that I need to grow and change. Let me let other people experience their pain. Let me trust leaders. Let me continue to go in the direction of people who I know I can trust, instead of supporting and leaning towards being with people who I cannot trust. So then I can maintain that old bad behavior that's hurtful, that's controlling, and all of those other things. You know, if you want to not, you know, be controlling, if you want to not be in the role of your childhood, if you want to not be afraid, that will also require choosing different relationships that support you being able to let go and lean back and have somebody take care of you. You know, my late husband, I just knew when there was a problem or something in the house that needed to be fixed or anything like that, I just always said, CJ, like, he would be frustrated. I'd be like, I don't even think about it because I trust you so much. I just trust your capability. And I meant it, I felt like I could just lean back, because he was just so, I trusted him, So having that in your life is a super valuable thing, but you have to be the person who then draws that into your life and that you go toward that. Okay, so I'm going to wrap up this podcast. There's so much more to say about it. And if you have questions, please leave them. I do ask if you would please, if you're listening to this, just, on like just without visually seeing me, I ask that you would go to my YouTube channel, Alison Answers. I don't have a lot of, I don't really promote that channel. I'm just asking now that people would like, subscribe, share. I really, really am doing this because I want to add value. I want to help people. I don't make money from doing any of these things. And I really just want to do this to help others. So also my book is The Wake Up Call, and I line out, in every chapter. It's an interactive book with journal prompts in each chapter that show you how to move out of these behaviors and change your mindset. And I think it's a valuable book. I'm going to be writing another one. I also don't make money on the book. I give the proceeds of that to help to protect children who are trafficked. So I just want to let you guys know that. And I do ask if you would, come to my Instagram and follow me. I would really appreciate that because I would like to be able to share more with more people. Love you so much. And I'll see you on our next show.